Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning. Let us now complete our discussion of Mahesh Tatani's plays with a final play called Dance Like a Man. And like the title of the play suggests, it again is a comment on the association of the exclusive association of dancing with women and femininity. And here in this case, you have a man who is a Bharatanatyam dancer, man and his wife. So the characters of the play include Jairaj and Ratna Parekh, who are both in their 60s when the play begins, and they're both, especially the wife Ratna Parekh, more than a husband, is a renowned Bharatanatyam dancer. They have a daughter called Lata, who is also a young dancer who wants to aspire to make it big in the foreign dance festival circuit. And you have an outsider named Vishwas, who is the son of the owner of a sweet store in Commercial Street, again set in Bangalore.
You must do what is expected of you. You cannot even earn your livelihood from this dance. But don't worry, I will never stop you from dancing.
You were interested in higher things. In Kuchipudi Bapu, the men dress up as women.
You promise you'll allow me to continue with my hobbies. It was when this was a hobby.
Our Lata will be the talk of the town, the star of the festival, the dancer of the decade.
A woman in a man's world may be considered progressive, but a man in a woman's world is only pathetic. Can you give me back my self-esteem?
When did I ever take it?
Are you happy for her?
Why shouldn't she get reviews like these? After all my efforts, you should have listened to your father. Dance has brought us nowhere. It's his curse on us.
The play opens with the possibility of an intercaste marriage between Vishwas and Lata. The play is largely set in the ancestral home of the Parikhs, and it's a home which has a lot of antique furniture. It's an old house, and it bears memories of a rich ancestral past. And Lata hopes that that her parents will permit her to get married to Vishwas, and she also hopes that Vishwas will allow her to get married, will allow her to dance after their marriage. Right, that's the only condition that she has. Lata's own parents, of course, belong to different castes and regions. Her father is Gujarati, while her mother is Ratna Parekh, is a Devdasi woman, right? A woman who belongs to a family of women who have dedicated their lives to local temples for whom they perform, right? So there's a lot of association, that historical association of the Devdasi with prostitution, which is not entirely correct, right? So Devdasis are women who belong to different caste groups, who are from a very young age dedicated to local deities and temples, where they perform as dancers, and they may choose to live outside the normative fold of the patriarchal heterosexual family, or they may also choose to actually have a male patron to whom they may not be married, right? So they get financial support from their male patrons. And so Jairaj's father, Amritlal, who is this very renowned and famous businessman, is completely against his son Jairaj getting married to Devdasi, to the daughter of Devdasi. She doesn't want him to get married to Ratna initially. And there's again these interesting flashbacks across time, across a period of 40 years, from the time Ratna and Jairaj were young to the present when they are in the 60s, and now they are parents of Lata. And so the house is full of antique furniture. In the present, Amritlal is dead, and the front room is recent. The front room, which is an extension of the house, is recent and it's meant for outsiders. But the inner part of the house is the original house, which is full of antiquities. Jairaj and Ratna, we discover later, once lived with Amrit Lal, but they had to leave because Jairaj's father, Amrit Lal, was against his wish to become a dancer, to be a dancer. Right, so Amrit Lal disapproves of Jairaj's desire to be a dancer. When Jairaj grows his hair long, Amrit Lal begins to think that his son has become rather effeminate and probably even homosexual. And so he stigmatizes and chastises his son for his desire to become a dancer. But he has no choice. So Jairaj and Ratna, once they get married, they move to Ratna's uncle's place. But then Ratna's uncle begins to make sexual advances to Ratna, and so then they return to their father. And by this time, the father Amritlal has to take them in, and he has no choice but to give in to his son's desire to marry this woman, to be with this woman, and also to become a successful dancer. Ratna, of course, on the other hand, also constantly resents Jairaj for not standing up to his father. She always berates Jairaj for not being an upright a man who stood for his principles and his desires. In the present, in the first act, in the present moment, both Lata and Jairaj are unable to, both Ratna and Jairaj are unable to find someone who can play the mridangam for Lata's new foreign performance that Lata will have to give before a committee, selection committee that will select the best dancers to perform in Canada. Right. So they're desperate to find someone who can play the mridangam for Lata's performance, because the mridangam player has slipped over his dhoti and injured himself, so he cannot be part of the performance. So, but Lata's mother Ratna is desperate to find someone who can play for her daughter's performance. In fact, she's desperate that her daughter should gain the fame and renown that she had when she was younger. And so she thinks that she is solely responsible through her sheer efforts in actually securing her daughter's future as a famous dancer. And then Ratna, much to her disgust and disapproval, has no choice but to ask Sheshadri, a man who is having an affair with another dancer. Jairaj also thinks that Ratna is right in her judgment of Jairaj. Right? He also feels that perhaps after 40 years of being a dancer, he has accomplished nothing. Jairaj is also an alcoholic. He drinks a lot. He spends a lot of his time drinking. And there are constant flashbacks in the play which develop Jairaj's relationship with his father Amritlal further. Amritlal, who was a freedom fighter, who fought against untouchability and dowry, but then also is, ironically regrets marrying his son to a Devdasi. And he did that only out of his liberalism. So if you remember the character of Ramnik in the earlier play we discussed by the Dattani Final Solutions, we have a similar character here called Amritlal, who is a liberal freedom fighter who fought against untouchability and dowry, but is now unwilling to marry his son to a Devdasi. But then only did it finally chose to do it or agreed to it only out of his liberalism. And like many other people, many other freedom fighters, many other social reformers of his generation, Amritlal assumed that Ratna was a Devdasi who had to be reformed by getting her married to his son. Right? So there's the assumption that she must have been a prostitute like her like her ancestors, for which she has to be reformed into marriage. Amritlal, of course, constantly also cannot tolerate his son's appearance. Right, he constantly makes fun of his son's guru, who seems to be effeminate and probably homosexual like his son, for growing his hair long. Right? So this kind of constant perception, this prejudice against male dancers as being effeminate and gay. But then finally, Ratna, is determined to actually further her own career as a dancer, despite her father-in-law's disapproval. and she wants to learn dance initially from an old dancer, an old woman who never had the opportunity to perform because she's also a Devdasi. And so she wants to learn from a very old Devdasi, much to her father-in-law's disapproval. And Jairaj also wants to start learning Kuchipudi. This is, of course, a flashback to when they both began dancing. And Jairaj again wants to start learning Kuchipudi, where men dress up as women and perform. Right, so that becomes another challenge to Amritlal's liberalism, and but then Amritlal has no choice because his son Jairaj is adamant to become a dancer, and finally Amritlal makes sure that he pays the old Devdasi off. In fact, he bribes her to prevent Ratna from seeing her. Right, so he almost gives the old poor Devdasi woman, the teacher, money, bribes her to prevent her from meeting and talking to Ratna, and therefore then later on Ratna and Jairaj decide to leave Amritlal. Right, but finally Amritlal gives in and allows them to practice to practice in his own house. He allows their guru to visit his house to teach them dance, although he is still ashamed that his son is growing his hair long and isn't manly enough. But he also knows that Ratna married him because he's a dancer and will allow her to dance. So the only reason that Ratna marries Jairaj is because he's also an aspiring dancer, and also because he will allow her to dance. But in the world of dance, we realize that lots of moral compromises have to be made. So Ratna realizes that she has no choice but to flatter the different, the VIPs, the patrons of the dancing field, in order to actually secure her daughter's career as a dancer. And so Dr. Gowda, who is one of these very important lawyers and clients and patrons of dance, puts Chandrakala on the selection committee. And Chandrakala is the same woman with whom the Mridangam player Shishadri is having an affair. So he puts Dr. Gowda puts Chandrakala on the selection committee to choose dancers to dance at the foreign dance festival at Canada. So Ratna, much against her own principles, has no choice but to flatter Dr. Gowda and to win his favor for the success of her daughter's show. There are, of course, later on rave reviews of Lata's performance which appear in the daily newspapers. And then there's a discussion and an argument which borders on an argument between Jairaj and Vishwas, where Vishwas discovers very excited to see the rave reviews of Lata's performance in the papers, and he shares them with Jairaj, who has read them. And Vishwas is not very comfortable with Lata, performing erotic dance items. Right, so he. In fact, Jairaj then has an argument with Vishwas, a rather defensive one, where he tells Vishwas that he performed the same erotic dance performances before the army, for which he was highly appreciated. So there is this moment of tension between Vishwas and Jairaj over eroticism and performance. Right? The entire play really is about performance itself and about the stigma of men performing and the stigma of women performing eroticism on stage. Ratna is convinced that it's basically her hard efforts at flattering the critics and the patrons and the sponsors that have made the papers that have compelled the papers to write good reviews of Lata's performance. We also discover later on through many flashbacks or the conversations between Ratna and Jairaj that Ratna had probably tried to, Jairaj accuses Ratna of eclipsing him in all their performances until she outshone him. Right, so it's not a level playing field for men and women in the world of dance. Men do not have it easy because when they have a wife or they're competing with women who are experienced dancers, it's not easy, partly because of the perception, the common prejudice against men who dance. So he does feel rather insecure, which is why he turns to alcoholism. He turns to drinking because he cannot bear the fact that his wife, he feels, has in some sense eclipsed him and betrayed him by outshining him, by competing with him, by being his primary rival. And there's also another secret which is revealed towards the end of the second act of the play, where we discover that Ratna and Jairaj once had a son called Shankar, and that the son Shankar was a baby who had been neglected by Ratna during her heyday as a dancer. So there was apparently no one to feed the baby on the nights when Ratna had to perform. So the baby was often put to sleep by the nanny by being fed with opium, right? And so the nanny, she discovers later, we discovered later that they lost the son to excess of opium. The child was made to sleep by the ayah with opium, and so we discover that that is how they lost the son. And so Jairaj accuses Ratna of being a negligent mother for losing their son and by choosing her career over her son. And so that is something that he always uses as a weapon against Ratna for to make her guilty for having remorseful for having uh, outshone him, right, for having completely eclipsed him in their performances. But then Ratna has a different perspective. She thinks that Jairaj has not taken on put in the hard work to actually be a good dancer. He has given up too early in life and has turned to alcohol simply because he could not take up the challenge of practicing and of becoming a good dancer. Jairaj thinks that his father used Ratna to dissuade him from dancing while giving her the freedom to dance. Right? But Ratna thinks that Jairaj is responsible for his own alcoholism and turned down invitations to dance because he did not want to dance alone, or because perhaps he could not acknowledge his own mediocrity. And so that is the tension, the friction between husband and wife, both of whom are dancers. So while Jairaj thinks that his father used Ratna to dissuade him from dancing, while giving her the freedom to dance, Ratna thinks Jairaj is actually responsible for his own alcoholism and for his own inability to actually work hard at his own dance. Or perhaps also because he cannot acknowledge his own mediocrity as a dancer when compared to her. And towards the end of the play, there's a vision of Ratna and Jairaj dying. There's a vision, kind of an almost imagined, fantasized vision of them reaching heaven, where they seem to learn from their own past mistakes as dancers. And in the present, Lata has married Vishwas and now has her own child. Right? And so Lata seems to be a fairly successful dancer, also because she's married to a man who allows her to dance. While the previous generation of Ratna and Jairaj learn from their own mistakes as they seem to be reaching heaven, and they realize that it was their own insecurities and their own inability to actually make their marriage work, or even their careers work, that has made them the failures that they are right today. So that's how the play Dance Like a Man ends. It ends on this note of this intergenerational difference between a couple, an older couple, who are both eminent dancers, but due to their own insecurities, their own desire for their own ambition, that they are not able to actually make it together as successful dancers. And Lata, who is now married to a man who allows her to dance, who has her own child, but has also made it big in the field of dance. So that ends our discussion of Dattani's plays. Thank you.